trying to think. So you've mentioned the word shame again, and I'm trying to think about that feeling in my life right now. And when I think about, so the feeling of shame, it seems like it would have to be connected with the notion of responsibility. Like I should feel, it's more obvious that shame is warranted if it's something that I did or didn't do, than if I'm thinking about somebody else who did or didn't do something. And I'm thinking about the Russian people, and I think I have two different sort of shades of that feeling, depending on whether I'm talking about, let's say, the supporters of the war or the supporters of the regime. Those were people who I've never agreed with, and you know, in my very modest way, try to, I don't know what the word is, fight or something. And then there's a shame that I feel for me, my actions or inactions, and then the failure of the people who were with me at, let's say, protests in Russia, trying to gain political agency, trying to get the right to vote for who we want to vote, and we failed. And so I feel stronger about that. Like maybe I could have done more, or maybe we collectively could have done more. Maybe if we argued with each other a little less, and we're able to unify and present a more unified front, the situation would have been different. And I don't know how to phrase the question.
I confess to being...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I don't know how to...
No, I was just going to confess ignorance about Russian history of the last 30 or 40 years to be able to know exactly. And I was going to ask you whether you had an overarching narrative of the sort that I sketched, where I start with slavery and I say the plight of a people enslaved who are adversely affected by that enslavement and who are then freed and have the challenge before them. And I'm seeing myself here all the way into the 21st century as being at the tail end of this drama of the progression and transformation of the social status and self-understanding of the descendants of slaves, you know, and of whom I count myself one, and whether there was anything like that for you about Russia, because if so, it would seem to be relevant.
Yeah, there is that narrative, though I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to formulate it. The what should I call it? What should I say? The uncharitable way of presenting that narrative that happens sometimes. People say things like that is the reason we haven't been able, and by we I mean both sort of the strain of the Russian society, of which I feel more a part of than the Russian society broadly, people who wanted to have democracy or their rights affirmed. We failed to gain political agency, and then I could argue Russians as a nation don't have political agency, because even if you support the regime, you're not really asked about that. It's not that people go to the polling station to really make the decision. That the polling station has been prepared for them, so that they can only choose one. I'm simplifying, but it's the case. And then so the uncharitable interpretation would be, we've never learned to take responsibility for our society because we were slaves or serfs in the 19th century. Then the Soviet Union had its own kind of serfdom, with people being jailed and sent to work in the camps, or even if you live in a city and you're a citizen that has the same rights as your neighbor, you don't have a whole lot of rights and freedoms, and so you're not making these decisions for the society collectively. And then that system falls apart in 1991, and we had a very short window of trying to assert ourselves, the people, to assert ourselves as the decision makers here. And part of the reason we failed, that narrative would go, is we haven't had this experience, and we didn't take that opportunity to retain the freedoms that sort of fell into our lap. The Soviet Union fell apart not because the Russian or the Soviet people rose up and said to be done with this. It happened sort of without our input. And so then what? Then the question is, how do you go from this position of submission to one where you actually take charge?
Okay, I'm going to ask an irreverent question, and I apologize in advance. I intend no offense. Here's the question I have in the back of my mind, and my ignorance will be revealed even in my asking of it. And again, I apologize. So, one story is that these forces were imposed upon the Russian people. They're not somehow, they're distinct from, there's the pre-revolutionary, pre-1917 order, feudalistic and whatever. There's the domination of the post-revolutionary government, the Soviet Union, and its anti-democratic, authoritarian, autocratic. There's the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it's a moment, and the moment passes, and we have what we have now that has emerged. There's I read some of those novels that you sent over to me. There's all the corruption, all the deadening of the soul, all of the decadence and the meaninglessness and it's like they're underneath. There's the heartbeat of the Russian people. There's the soul. There's the beauty. There's the, and it can't get out. It's being repressed. So that's one story. But a reaction to that story could be, that's way, way, way too simple. That's romantic. I don't know if the demos governed in Russia, that it would be all flowers on the streets and all the tanks would be retired and there'd be no repression, there'd be no there'd be no hatreds, there'd be no nationalist fervor. I don't know that. I don't know that the soul of the Russian people is pure and that purity has only been repressed by one or another external force. I don't know that at all. I know little about the soul of the Russian people, but why should I believe that it's pure? And again, I mean no disrespect.
Yeah, I guess the way I feel about it is I would like to discover what the Russian soul would look like, expressed in a state that actually, that there's like this connection, this sort of decision-making power on the part of the Russian people. There's another angle to approach from, which is the phrase that comes to mind. This is Davlatov, a writer, Soviet writer who then immigrated to the United States and I think died there. And he, in one of his columns, I think for a newspaper, like an immigrant newspaper in the U.S., said, and this would be in the 80s probably, he said, we keep talking, keep saying all these, criticizing Comrade Stalin, and for right reasons, but I still want to ask the question, who wrote all of these reports that ended up, acting on those reports, the state sent people to the camps. Isn't there responsibility to be taken there on the part of the people? The state afforded you the opportunity to send your neighbor to the camp. You've used that opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have an answer to that, except that I would like to see what happens if Russian people have agency, political agency. Because as of now, I don't know if I think we don't. Even with this war, there are a lot of supporters of this war in Russia, but they were still not making a decision.